The day that I found out I was pregnant was April 12th.
Manda um beat pra mim.
Welcome to my I didn't know I was pregnant story time. Though I am sitting down, I'm gonna put my heels on. I've got some jeans on, my jeans that I was so concerned didn't fit me. I got a fresh pedicure, so yeah, I wanna wear my heels while I sit here and talk to you guys. Let's make it a little closer. I've got Poppy today because there wasn't any Olipop when I went to the store. Where do I even begin? I've got my notes because I want to stay focused and I don't want to talk too much, even though we know a long vlog works. But before we get into it, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jasmine. If you're new here, I am currently pregnant with my second baby, and this is a video that I'm sure plenty of people want to see because we'll get to the because. If you're not new here and you've been watching my channel the last couple of vlogs, thanks for coming back. I appreciate it. Make sure you like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the rest of what I have going on, the rest of my pregnancy, as I continue to journey into motherhood, just all of the things. So this, again, is a video that you don't want to miss. So the day that I found out I was pregnant was April 12th. I went in for an ultrasound for my fibroids, and I just was feeling like I was having gut health issues, like I just wasn't slimming down with all the working out and the de-bloating and all the things that I was doing. So that was the day that I found out I was pregnant. But before we even continue forward from April 12th, let's just rewind. We gotta take it back. So my son, I breastfed him exclusively, breastfed him for 14 months. So last summer, so August, my last period was in August. Didn't think anything of it though, because when you're breastfeeding, it's totally not uncommon for you to not get your period. It's totally not uncommon for you to have a period. It goes away. Like it comes and it goes, which I had already experienced early on with him. So my first period after just like having a baby in general, I don't remember the exact like date of it. I had my son November 2022. So my first period was like very short, probably was earlier in the year of 2023, and then it went away. So no big deal. I'm breastfeeding. Like, again, it's totally not uncommon. So life is good. We're living, we're moving through things. It's summer. It's, you know, I'm just being a mom in 2023, and summer's rolling around. Like we're living. I'm finally starting to feel like, okay, bet. I'm like getting back to myself. I'm feeling good. And we prepare to travel to see our friends in Texas so let's see. We actually took 2 trips to Texas. We took a trip to Texas in May, and I know because I had just gotten a new position. I had just gotten promoted to the position that I'm in now, and we went to go see our other friends. That we have our like friends in Texas, two sets of friends in Texas. So we took our first Texas trip. That was like end of April, early May. So I guess we'll just say like that first week of May. So I definitely wasn't pregnant then. My son was like 5 months, no big deal. So we take a second trip to Texas in 2023. And that is like September, end of September, bleeding into early October, because our other friends that we were seeing, their son's birthday is in October. So it was a big group trip, French trip, the whole 9. I was still exclusively breastfeeding then, and my last period that I logged at least was in August. So that was just the last time I remember. I don't know if that's super accurate, but apparently based on the timeline it is. So apparently I will just say that I ended up getting pregnant, we'll say like end of August, probably early September. I wasn't showing. They typically, you know, people say, oh, you start showing earlier with your second. I wasn't showing at all. I'm gonna include a variety of pictures that just kind of like emphasize how flat my stomach was. Like I literally wasn't showing at all, you guys. Anyway, so we go to Texas, all is good. One of my girlfriends is pregnant during our Texas trip. And again, it's like a big family trip, so it's all of us. So one of our friends, a set of our friends, they moved back to Texas. And they were like, if there's 3 couples, they were the 4th couple like in our crew. So they moved back to Texas, where they're from, no big deal. So we're like, bet, we're gonna pull up. Like, we're gonna all come out there. We're bringing the babies, obviously, husbands, wives, and kids. At this point, each of us only has 1 kid, but one of them was pregnant. So I didn't think anything of it. I'm exclusively breastfeeding my child. He's 10 months, no big deal. So time continues forward. We come home, we're doing girls' night, it's birthdays, we're going out to dinner, we're just like doing the regular thing. My stomach is still flat. September, October. So even before we went to Texas, it was my other girlfriend's birthday. So we celebrated that. There's a high chance I was pregnant then, but even when I look at those pictures, it doesn't look like. To me, it looks like what I thought was the early stages of Diastasis Recti. So anyway, her birthday, then we all go to Texas, and then we come back, and then things kind of continue forward from there. So yeah, I'm still wearing high-waist pants. Like, I'm feeling good. Like, I'm not feeling, I've had no nausea, haven't had any symptoms that, no extreme fatigue, nothing that would indicate pregnancy, at least the way I had experienced it with my first child. So in October, I also go and get my whole health women's whole health exam, and I do blood work because typically you do blood work. So my blood work at that time only indicated that I had some sort of infection, which I was talking about at some point, and we never figured out what that infection was. Well, my white blood cell count was high and my neutrophils were high, and they're like, well, that usually means that you're like fighting an infection, or I forget what the or is, but anyway. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, you know, we do blood work, my iron's low, like things like that, totally not uncommon. And, I then follow up with blood work in December to make sure that my iron levels have been risen, have been met, the infection is no longer indicated, and we go forward from there. In between there, my birthday was in November, so my husband and I go to dinner like we usually do. I didn't look pregnant. I will throw one of those pictures up, even though I don't like what I'm wearing is kind of like the material's thick, the like blazer dress that I've worn, and I was wearing a fur coat. It was rainy, so it wasn't super, it just wasn't super like, it wasn't anything that was like really like hugging my belly or anything, no big deal. So I will say though, at dinner, there was a point in time where I just felt like off, and I at the time couldn't explain what that off was, what that off meant, but I just was like, I just feel a little weird, but let me just like go to the bathroom and you know, I should be fine. So I went to the bathroom, everything was fine, no big deal. Dinner continues, life continues, like life is good. So I got the follow-up blood work in December, like I mentioned, and there was no indication, so I looked back at those reports, there was no indication of elevated HGC levels, and HGC is what makes a pregnancy test positive when you are pregnant. So no reason to think I was pregnant, no indication of it. No, I also didn't do a urine test, so it's tricky. Like maybe the urine test would have indicated it, but I feel like blood work is the most accurate. However, the blood work did not show. So cool, boom, we go through December. Also, it's my son's birthday in November, so just jumping around. My son's birthday in November, we're planning, it's his first birthday. We go to Disneyland in December. I do like a campaign with Cadillac, the whole thing. And I was just starting to feel like, man, like I feel like my stomach still isn't like super large, especially if we think about conception. If I conceived, we'll just say in September, October, November, December, at that point, I'm technically 3 months pregnant, and I just don't feel like I'm looking pregnant the way that I looked, which was very early on with my son when I was pregnant with him. Like when I found out I was pregnant with him, I was already a month and I had like the smallest little pooch, like the smallest little bump. So no big deal. We go to Disneyland. We don't ride like a ton of rides because it's about the kids, and like I was doing the whole thing with Cadillac and made me late and like all this stuff, and we were just doing the most, trying to just like get to Anaheim, get to Disneyland, family, the whole nine. My friends came, so nothing crazy. So then I took a pregnancy test in January, and what did it say? It said that it was negative. So that is why I was like, bet, I'm definitely not pregnant. So make sure that I'm still on cue here. But yeah, so it said it was a negative. It was false negative apparently, but it was negative. So I was like, cool, like I have no reason to believe that I'm pregnant. And then as time went by, like it's like winter still, so I'm dressing in like oversized sweaters and like oversized hoodies, like nothing out of the ordinary in my opinion. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start working out. Like I feel like my stomach is just not even like expanding, it just wasn't rounding out like how round I look now. It totally did not look like how it looks. And on top of that, you guys, I have fibroids, and on top of that, my fibroids are surface, they're fundal, so they're not inside of my uterus, they are, which is a blessing, they are outside and on top, if you will, of my uterus. I have 5. They're almost the size, and maybe not all of them, but based on what I can feel, because they're so surface, they're almost the size of like little golf balls. Golf balls aren't that little in the general sense, but or even like a little, like a beer pong, like ping pong ball. But that's the size that they are. They didn't affect me with my first pregnancy. I've never had an issue with them. I've never had any bleeding or anything abnormal with them. So those weren't an issue in the traditional sense. However, I was like, well, it looks like I've got a case of diastasis recti, which my chiropractor told me back when I was going to the chiropractor and I was pregnant with my son. So that was like, I won't even say end of 2022 because I had him in November. So 37 weeks and earlier, if I had him at 39 and 4, at least early November and like earlier. He was like, oh, looks like you have like a mild case of DR. So I'm like, okay, well, there's nothing I can do about it now because I'm pregnant and I'll just have to basically like wait and see how my body heals. So that is why I was also super adamant about DR. And then when you look at photos of women who have diastasis recti, their stomachs just like, your stomach can look super like wide, round, just all the things. It just looks, it looks big. The only difference between myself now looking back and like thinking, like now that I've processed all of this, the one difference between like my stomach and someone else's stomach who actually has a pretty bad case of DR is like my stomach skin wasn't loose. It was very tight. So that was also tough because it's like, well, my stomach isn't loose. I don't have like it's not fat. So why is my stomach so tight, but also so wide to some degree? And again, it did not look like a pregnancy belly. I felt kicks super late with my first child, with my son. So I didn't feel any kicks like early on or anything that would have been like, wow, I'm pregnant. The first time I did feel kicks, I thought they were phantom kicks because again, I don't think that I'm pregnant. So it's like all of these things that are happening to me, it's just like, okay, well, I'm looking up all of these things, all of these phenomenons, if you will, and all of these things are possible. All of these things are a possibility. So it's not so far off that I didn't think I was pregnant. And my mother-in-law asked my husband, and like, he's a good man, Savannah, because he was very much like, no, like she said, she's not pregnant. Obviously, I'm not gonna do anything or say anything that's gonna make her like feel away or feel bad about herself. Like I was totally feeling super insecure. I was working out. I had joined another mom's that I had connected with on Instagram. I joined her like fitness program. So I was literally doing everything I could, you guys, to, which some of you know because I was discussing it mostly on Threads. But I was doing everything I could to really like pull it together, like what is going on. I was wearing my postpartum waist training band, if you will, which isn't even like a waist trainer in that sense, but I was wearing that while working out, while not working out, while walking, just doing everything I could to help bring my abs together. Every single workout. That's the other thing too. I know I have a slight form, even though I am pregnant, of DR because your stomach cones in the center, which isn't a good thing. So when your stomach cones, that was a thing. So when I was doing like DR workouts and certain workouts, they're like, okay, well, it's fine to do these workouts, but you don't want to do them and continue to do certain things if your stomach is coning. And my stomach was coning. So all of these things just like weren't adding up. And obviously a baby doesn't start out super big when you're pregnant. Like a baby eventually grows into a larger being, but it just wasn't giving pregnancy. It just wasn't. And people started to ask, like, so my mother-in-law asked, my aunt said she had a feeling, my husband's cousin was like, oh, are you expecting again? And I'm just like, man, like, I'm not pregnant. Like, my stomach is just round. And then someone from my church who I'm really good friends with had asked, 3 of my girlfriends had asked, and I was just like, all right, like, I feel like I need to address the elephant in the room because people keep asking me if I'm pregnant and I'm just not. Like, at this point, I I don't even know when I first started to feel kicks, but again, I assume they were phantom, but I can't even pinpoint a month and like I can't even put a time frame to it, but nothing felt out of the ordinary to me. And it was just different from what I had experienced with my first pregnancy. And I mean, again, no extreme fatigue, no extreme tiredness, like nothing that was like, okay, maybe I could be pregnant. Outside of my period being gone, I just figured, okay, well, I breastfed for a good while. It'll make its way back, which obviously it never did. And yeah, I just kind of continued on living from there, trying to work out. I was taking D-bloat supplements. I chose Lemmy, but there were so many other brands out there. Can't even think of the other brands right now, but like that was its own rabbit hole. So then I had reached out. So I go to Tia for women's health care. I'm just not a huge fan of doctors and the hospital. And I feel like my first OB experience, like, it was a variety of things. So with my first pregnancy, I had an OB. So at the time that I went to that OB, I was pregnant with my son. That was a terrible experience. And then it took me a while to find another one. So then I found another one, but she was only going to be there for a little bit of time because she was transitioning to a different practice and like all of these things. And it was just like, it was just a lot going on. So for those that don't know, I also had a home birth with my first son, and I'm planning another home birth center birth with this baby. And I was already planning to go to the midwives back then, but you have to wait until you're at least a certain gestational period. So I went to a regular OB at the beginning, and then I transitioned to my midwives after the fact. But anyway, all of that being said, nothing felt like how it felt the first time. I had no round ligament pain, which totally took me out when I had my son. I'm like, whatever symptoms I felt when I was pregnant with my son, I had zero, none of that. Not even a single lick of it when I was pregnant with this little nugget. So most people know that I had a story rant, and I was just like, listen, like, I'm not pregnant. I have ab separation. Like, it's called this. It's so annoying to have people assume that you're pregnant. And for me, the reason why I was so adamant and of course standing on business was because I took a test and it was negative. I had blood work done and it didn't show that I was pregnant. So it was frustrating that people, though in their hearts obviously didn't know, like, oh, maybe I should or shouldn't ask, which by the way, you shouldn't. No one knew that I had did those things. Like, and it wasn't my prerogative to explain to people. Like, I don't need to explain every single step that I've done to get to this point to be like, this is why I'm sure, blah, blah, blah. For those that knew, they knew. And for those that didn't, they didn't. And a lot of people didn't. It wasn't anything that I needed to explain to anybody. Like, I had a reason to believe that I wasn't pregnant. It wasn't a facetious thing. I'm a married woman, so it's not like I was embarrassed or ashamed. Like, if I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant. It's definitely not that deep. So ultimately, again, I was taking D-bloat supplements. I feel like I took all of them. They didn't work, obviously, for obvious reasons. And I just was like, man, like nothing is working at all. So March, a girlfriend of mine had her child, and then I want to say either the end of February, she had a baby sprinkle, and the moment I walked in, another friend was like, oh my gosh, are you pregnant? Is this baby number 2? And I was just like, no. So I just felt like I needed to dress in a way that was like covered up, jackets, oversized hoodies. I had my like jean jacket buttoned up because I was just so tired of people asking me or assuming that I was pregnant and not knowing, of course, all the things that I had did to get to that point where I was just like, no, like, don't freaking ask me. So I had this whole like thing on IG. Over 600 people had viewed it, and people were just like, oh my gosh, people are so annoying, like, I'm so sorry. And then Then someone else, that same exact time that I posted that story, someone else was like, oh, I knew you were pregnant. It's totally a pregnant bump, like blah, 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 which by the way is just so annoying. Like, do not do that. You don't know anything. And if you're in the mindset of like, oh, I was right, like, see, like to me, whether or not you feel like you knew or anything, it's like you don't know. There are tons of reasons why women can look pregnant, have stomachs that are large, round, odd shaped, or anything. It's like you technically don't know. Just because you feel like it or just because you assume doesn't mean you know. So for me, that was just like off-putting. It's just like you don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know that I had a negative test just a couple of months ago, and I didn't take another test after that because I just didn't see what the point was, considering the blood work, considering that negative test, all the things. Fast forward back to April. It's April 12th and I go in. So I've got my ultrasound set up. At this point, I had reached back out to Tia and I'm like, look, I don't know what's going on. I feel like I'm having gut health issues. My stomach is round, I have DR, like I've already like self-diagnosed. I'm like, I've got this, I've got that. So I like show them my stomach and I'm like, but my stomach isn't like fat and it's like not loose skin, which she agreed with. She thought that was super weird. Like, oh yeah, like that's super weird. So she's like, okay, cool. Well, we'll make a referral for you to get an ultrasound, and here's some so she gave me basically like it's not low glycemic, but like it's called a FODMAP. So basically there's like high like low FOD foods and high FOD foods. So like eating grapefruit over eating apples, like certain things have more sugar, like certain things just can really add to and affect your gut health overall. So she's like, okay, like here's a list of foods. You don't have to go crazy and like change your whole diet, but here's a list of things that you could try swapping or try eating instead of what you may be eating. Because that's the thing too, I was eating healthy, like I have a relatively healthy diet outside of eating a lot of fruit, which could end up being too much sugar. Like outside of that, like I have a relatively good healthy diet, which has been a blessing because I literally breezed through the first part of my pregnancy unbothered, unhindered, no issues. God is so good, and I'm so grateful that nothing occurred that was alarming in the sense of like, you should probably go to the hospital alarming. But other than that, like I had no reason to feel like I was doing anything wrong. But I'm like, if I am, like somebody let me know. So fast forward, it's April and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go look at my fibroids. Maybe they're getting larger. That's totally not uncommon. Maybe that's what it is. I can feel them, I can see them, all of these things. At this point, I probably have felt kicks, but it didn't feel as consistent as it does now, that's for sure. And I was just like, man, like maybe it's still phantom kicks. Like I just, again, didn't think I was pregnant. But on the day that I went to find out, I went for an injection, there's a place by my house called 444 IV. And they do like IVs and like meltdown injections. Just, you can do an injection, you can do an IV, you can go for a massage. It's like a health and wellness place. So I was telling the girlfriend like, all right, girl, I'm about to go get an injection. And I was telling the girl, I was like, man, like it's so crazy because I feel like I look like I'm pregnant now, but I don't believe that I am. So how often do people get these injections? So she's telling me all these details, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to, when I lay down, like think about how my stomach, like during the day, it seemed like everything was flatter. And I was even like acknowledging when I would wear my band, like, wow, like today my stomach looks flatter than normal, which is so crazy thinking about the fact that like, yeah, you were pregnant. But looking back, like I was really like tracking these things like, okay, my stomach looks flatter today. That's wonderful. Like maybe that's a sign that my abs are closing up, because technically also, when you have DR, healing and like exercises should take about like, we'll just say like 5 to 6 weeks. We'll even say 6 to 8 weeks to like fully heal. So I'm like, I am like doing this. I'm working out. I'm doing all the things. I'm walking. I'm just, doing what I need to do. So that same day that I did the injection, it was a Friday, I was then going for my ultrasound. So I'm like, okay, I get there. This is good. I get there for my ultrasound and I'm like, and thinking about it now, the girl was probably like, girl, you look pregnant. So I get there and I'm just like, she's like, yo, like you're here because you're like having gut issues or like you want to look at your fibroids. I'm like, yeah, like people keep asking me if I'm pregnant. Like I feel like today I look super round and like how I look now, a little smaller, but how I look now. So I was like, yeah, like I look round, but I'm just like, I'm not pregnant. Like I don't really know what else to do. I just want to see what's going on. Is it my fibroids? Like, what is it? Because I really just don't know what's going on. So we do the ultrasound, we do transvaginal, which is when they like put the probe inside. And then we did transabdominal when they do just the regular ultrasound. And she didn't say anything. There was a point where she like cut the sound on and she was like, oh, I'm just listening to your, what did she call it? Like, I'm just listening to your, I don't know what she said, but maybe, and it didn't sound like a heartbeat, but obviously it's like you do an ultrasound, like you can hear the inside of your stomach. And I had a full bladder, which they always, like encourage, because then you can like make sure that this, that, and the third, whatever, ultrasound business. So she's super nice, like super gentle, and it like kind of takes a while. So I'm just like, okay, like no big deal, but she doesn't say anything. So she's like, okay, we're all done. So I'm like, okay, cool. So the doctor, so she leaves out, the doctor comes in and the doctor's like, oh, so like, hi, nice to meet you. Funny because the doctor was pregnant. So she's like, oh, nice to meet you. I'm so-and-so. And she's like, so when we find something during the ultrasound, we usually will come and tell you. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, what did you find? And she's like, oh, you're pregnant and you're more than halfway through. So I just immediately started laughing because I was just like, that's not what I came here for. I totally did not think that I was. So, I mean, the news was shocking to me and not in a negative way. Again, I'm a married woman. It's not a big deal. I'm not embarrassed. I was more so just annoyed at the fact that it's like everyone just like, oh, like I knew, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, but you didn't. And just because I am pregnant now doesn't mean that you're right. It just doesn't mean anything. Like at the end of the day, I had went through what I had went through, blood work, negative pregnancy test, and all of that. So it's just like, technically you didn't know anything. So I told my husband immediately after because he was there. So it wasn't really like I didn't do anything cutesy or whatever. He was waiting for me to be finished. So I went out and I'm just like, so I'm pregnant. And he wasn't like shocked in a bad way either, but it was just more shocked because I had been doing so much to try to be healthier, like try to not even get skinnier, but just like work on my gut health, like work on what I thought was gut issues, and like debloat, all this stuff. So it was just more of like an aha moment. And he was more so concerned like, okay, well, you haven't really been like eating for two. And I wasn't like starving myself or anything, but it's like, you're eating differently and eating, maybe I'm fasting a little bit more to try to, figure out what the gut issues were. So it was just a whirlwind. And, finding out that you're more than halfway through your pregnancy is pretty crazy because then everything just kind of like takes off really fast. The first thing I did was reach out to my midwives, which I'm just so grateful that I have them. It was so funny. They were like, I'm thinking of like, literally when I got in the car, like emailed them, like, I need you guys to know I'm pregnant again right away. We need to, like, I need intake. I need to do all the things. And we just need to like, get this started. So, I have been sleeping on my back, like all the things that you're like not supposed to do when you're pregnant. But I was doing that also at a point because I was just like, my stomach seems flat when I lay on my back. So, but it didn't seem super flat when I laid on my side. So I'm just like, I just don't know what's happening. But anyway, so April 12th is when I found out that I was pregnant. And I'm just gonna say more than halfway along. I don't feel like I'm obligated to give anyone the exact date, exact weeks, etc. My close friends who know the story, you know, do know how many weeks I was when I found out, but I was certainly more than halfway along. So that was interesting. And I mean, now how I'm feeling about it, as because I'm a planner and because I feel like I planned so hard to, first of all, it's just also not uncommon for a woman who's had a baby to be extra fertile and just get pregnant again immediately after. Like, that's not super common. And at this point, I was pregnant a year into having my son. So it's just not uncommon. Like, again, I'm a married woman, so it's not like I'm just out here with anybody. I'm with my husband, so you know that, you know, we're doing married people things. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing, okay? So as someone who's a planner, because I wanted to, and we were talking about this with a best friend today, like, we were very adamant about like when we're gonna plan. Like, I ideally wanted to be pregnant, like, we'll start trying end of this year, and then I'll be pregnant going into 2025, and then we'll move forward from there. But what do we always say? You make plans and God laughs. And I just feel like he kept me and made sure that everything was good in the midst of all of my shenanigans of thinking that I wasn't pregnant and trying to get a flat stomach and just be back to myself, wearing the jeans that I couldn't fit then, and I just can't zip now, but I can still fit them. So whoop, can't wait to put them back on the proper way. But as a planner, it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, well, I didn't get to plan it how I wanted to, but ultimately it got planned how God wanted it to be. I'm super grateful that my kids won't be super far apart. I'm super grateful that it's happening now. I'm super grateful that I didn't have to think about trying and using ovulation kits and all the things that I had to do with my first pregnancy. I'm grateful that I breezed through. Like, your girl was living my best life. Unfortunately, like, I had a couple of cocktails over the course of time, and it's not like I was like out like drinking and going crazy or anything like that. But it's like, you know, you go to girls' night, I had like a lemon drop, or I had a martini, whatever. So I'm just super grateful that in all of that, baby has just been super healthy, super active, super just prepared, perfect, in the right position, not breach, not any of the things that people can go through typically. I'm just really grateful that I have had the type of pregnancies that I had, and that this one, I mean, at this point surpassed even the first one, which was such a beautiful experience. And yeah, I feel like the only thing that I was feeling in my midwife, I was like, like, how do you feel about it all? The only thing that I felt was, if this is our last baby, like, if we're good, like, two's good, I don't feel it anymore, but like, I felt a little bummed initially that I like missed the whole thing. But also it's like, I wasn't even showing, so it's not like I was gonna be cradling a bump or anything the first 4 months, because I wasn't. So if this is our last baby, which maybe it is, maybe it's not, maybe we'll go for a third, before I'm 35. I'm 33, I turned 34 this year, so I don't know. But if this is our last child, then initially I just felt a little bummed, because I was like, well, like, I kind of like missed the whole thing. But then also it's like, well, what a blessing that I just didn't even have to not like think about it, but I just didn't have to think about it to some degree. Like, I just stayed active. I just made sure I did what I needed to do. And the end is just about, the preparation. I'm not nervous or anything. I've done the home birth experience. I love my midwives. I've talked about them in a couple of videos earlier. And in those videos, did I know I was pregnant then? I think so. The videos, when I recorded them, like, at that point, I was still saying I wasn't pregnant, even though I had found out that I was. So I wasn't about to be like, I'm pregnant now. Like, I knew that there was going to be a whole story time, like a whole thing, because it's a whirlwind on how I found out. But yeah, as far as anything else, like, I didn't tell my girlfriends right away. Like, I waited until I saw one in person, and then right before, so I did my photo shoot at the end of April, because I found out in April. So last Saturday in April, I did my photo shoot, which is the shoot that I released on the Friday before Mother's Day, those pictures. Yeah, I was just like, I don't owe anyone anything. Again, I'm not embarrassed. I don't feel like I need to carry around any type of like guilt or anything for people who want to be like, oh, I was right, and like, ooh, I told you, and you had us believing that. Like, you believe what you want to believe. I spoke on what I knew to be true at the time, and that's the perfect way one of my girlfriends explained it. Like, you were speaking from a perspective of what you knew at the time, what you knew to be true at the time. So you're not gonna make me feel bad. Like, you're not gonna make me feel like I did something wrong, or I made you feel like, because first of all, it's me. I'm the one that's pregnant. I'm the one that's carrying. I'm the one that is having this experience. So there's no guilt over here. There's no trip over here. You can say what you need to behind my back and all the things. And I was right, and I knew it because she looked. You can, all of that. All of that is fantastic for you. But as for me, I'm gonna enjoy the rest of my pregnancy, and I'm glad that I shared the news now, and I'm glad that I get to experience this with other girlfriends of mine who are also expecting. So it's just a good time. It's a wonderful time. Babies are a blessing. I'm a married woman. So, you know, at this point, it's like, we're here. There's no turning back. I'm obviously, there would never be any turning back in general, but I'm here. We're at this point, we're at this phase now, and I'm having a second baby. So it just is what it is. We're not sharing the gender. We're waiting until the baby gets here. So we will just, you know, when the baby gets here and we decide to share that the baby's here, then at that time, the baby's gender will be revealed. The baby's name and whatnot will be revealed. And, you know, we'll just like continuously go forward from there. Yeah, I'm like, it just is what it is. I'm not embarrassed, but this is a crazy story, and it's like, when you hear it, it's just like, well, I can see how you wouldn't think you're pregnant, especially when you've done blood work, especially when, you know, you looked like you weren't pregnant for a good while. So it just, that was the experience that I had, and I'm just super grateful that I was able to experience my second pregnancy in this way, and that I've been good, that I've been comfortable, that I've, you know, my focus wasn't on the baby, it was on bettering my health. So that's a bad thing to focus on. It's not a bad thing to focus on. I wasn't doing anything drastic. I got one injection, and that was literally the day that I went and found out. So it wasn't like I was doing all these crazy things like that I really shouldn't have been doing. But I just took it like, okay, I'm just gonna have to ride this out. I'm gonna have to just figure out what's going on with my health. And I'm glad that I'm still healthy. Got my prebiotic soda, and I'm just glad that everything worked out. I'm glad that I have super supportive midwives. I'm glad that I have super supportive people in my corner. I'm glad that this is my experience, and that I get to, again, be a positive story of pregnancy, a positive scenario, no issues, no hurt, harm, or danger, no weapons formed against me, nothing. Like, it's quite a blessing that I get to experience pregnancy this way, and I enjoy being pregnant. I love how I look when I'm pregnant. I love how I feel when I'm pregnant. So it's really not an issue for me. So yeah, that is how I didn't know I was pregnant, and I didn't find out until I was more than halfway through my, through my pregnancy. So that's the story. That's the truth. That's the tea. That's how it all went down. I would have been on an episode of I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant, that show that used to come on, because people also have those experiences. Like, those are real experiences. So I don't really care what anyone has to say. I don't really care what anyone has to think. I look good pregnant, okay? She looks good pregnant, okay? So I'm riding it out. I'm just soaking in every day, 24 hours, walking, still taking care of what I eat. You know, my midwives are in my corner, making sure that I'm doing right with all those things and getting enough protein and making sure I'm not having too much sugar. So that is one thing that I'm watching my sugar intake, because as y'all know, some of y'all, I was really into my parfaits, but the yogurt, granola, and adding fruit and having it every day is quite a bit of sugar. And it's not that it's like bad food, but it's like, if you're wondering like, dang, like I work out regularly, I'm for sure not pregnant, what could be the cause of it? It could be that there's a lot of things that are just like high in sugar, even when they're natural things, even when it's fruit, even when it's, you know, etc., etc. So something to consider for the non-pregnant girlies who like a parfait like I do. If you're wondering why maybe you're not losing a little bit of extra in your gut, check the sugar on your fruit, on your honey, on your granola. You know, sugar starts adding up, and yes, things are high in protein, but if it's more sugar than protein, then it's like offsetting. So just some things that I've learned. But anyway, I love a good prebiotic soda, and it's only 5 grams of sugar. So with this has added sugar, which is unfortunate, and I don't know that Olipop does. I'll have to check my Olipop cans when I get some more, but it's only 8% versus like my parfait, the freaking yogurt is like 26 grams of sugar. The granola is like 32 or something crazy. So now I'm like a sugar checking girly, and it's good because I have a kid, so I also need to make sure that I'm not giving him too much sugar based on things that I feel like, oh, like it's not sugar, it's yogurt, but you just gotta check those things. So anyway, that's the story, that's the tea. I'm gonna take some pictures of myself while I'm in here in my jeans that don't button or zip because my belly is so big. And yeah, that's how I ended up finding out I was pregnant, and that was why I didn't know I was pregnant or believe I was pregnant until I went and got an ultrasound in April. So think what you want to think. I'm living my best. I'm very happy. I'm excited to be a mama of 2. I'm excited for the newborn phase, the squishy, yummy smelling, they do nothing but sleep phase. And yeah, I'm not gonna, because it's the second baby, I'm not gonna like be all held up and be all nervous and all of that good stuff. Like when it's time to have the baby, I'll be ready. When it's time to take care of baby, I'll be ready. My main priority right now is getting a new stroller so I can push them both together. But that's a whole nother video and a whole nother thing, because these strollers, it's like the stroller needs to be light enough, but then the attachments have, like those have weight limits, but then it's like my son is tall, so it's like the legs, like it's just a whole lot with the stroller thing. But I'm definitely getting a stack stroller, not a double wide stroller. But in my research, I can understand why people would get a double wide stroller, because then there's no hindrance on having a seat up top, having a seat down below, and legs and weights and all these different things and pieces and compartments. But yeah, that's a whole nother thing. So anyway, if you got to the end of this video, thank you for watching. And yeah, never call a woman out and tell her that she's pregnant or you think she's pregnant or whatever the case may be until she tells you herself. Excuse me. Even if you think, even if you just know in your heart of hearts, even if God told you himself that so-and-so was pregnant, just wait until she tells you, wait until she finds out, wait until whatever the case is. People do it to celebrities all the time. It's so tacky. Like, oh, I just knew that so-and-so was pregnant. I just knew. I just wish she didn't lie. Like all these different things. Like, who are you guys? Who are you guys? It's very, very rude and it's very distasteful. Even if you feel and have a gut inkling and all that stuff, just keep it to yourself. Just wait. And then when she announces, then you can get into how you had a feeling, had a dream, had a fish story, and all those other things that, you know, people say when someone ends up finding out that they're pregnant. So be nice, be polite. Don't, if you're not sure, don't ask. I think that's the easiest way to do it, because you never know what a woman's going through. A lot of women aren't pregnant. Some women are trying to get pregnant. Some women have miscarried. You never know why a woman may look a little more round in the stomach, a little more full in the stomach, a little more whatever compared to how you're used to seeing her. So it's just best if you don't ask. It's best if you keep your thoughts and your comments to yourself until you know for sure, even if you have no ill intent. And I'm sure people had no ill intent, especially when it comes to me, but you know, you just never know what people's MOs are. So you just gotta watch it. So on that note, I will talk to you guys in another video. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And if you've had an experience where you found out by surprise that you were pregnant, drop it in the comments below. Let me know what happened. Let me know how you found out, if you feel led to share. And yeah, I will talk to you guys in the next video.